All right, welcome to another episode of the Leveling Up podcast. I am here today with bridge enthusiast Charlie Wilkins. Thanks for joining us, Charlie.
Hey, welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you and your bridge background.
Well, I fell in love with bridge when I was a teenager and learned the game by reading every book on bridge in the local public library. And I played bridge in college and then gave it a 30-year vacation because there was no room for it in my life. And then Leah and I semi-retired, moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, which we loved. And I picked bridge back up and haven't quit since.
That's too common a story. We need to make bridge easier to fit in with a life and career and family. All right, so you said you read all these bridge books. Were there some that were more life-changing than others? Any favorites?
Well, the favorites are the Terrence Reese over-the-shoulder books, I think.
Oh, good.
I keep going back to those. And of course, I love the ones with the arcane types of hands that never occur at the table.
Right, very practical.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't you tell everyone how you got on my radar and why I wanted to talk with you?
Well, I started subscribing to your blog, and you wrote about your Leveling Up initiative, and that's something that I've been working on. So when I was in Santa Fe, I started partnering with the local pro, a guy named Dennis Dawson, who died in 2002, but is totally delightful guy, loved bridge, and actually would rather play imps against top opponents than do anything else in the world. He'd rather do that than be with his family, rather than do that than eat, which he loved. And I told him I wanted to play bridge as well as I could, and I didn't know how good that was, but it probably wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. And that was 5 years ago, and I've been leveling up since then.
That's great. So, what sort of regimen did he suggest for you?
Well, interestingly, the first thing we did is I've got 3 friends. We'd go over to his house. He would hand out boards with hands that had been played in the local club in the last couple of months. And he would just watch while we bid and played the hands, and he'd break in and make comments. And one of the things he said is that he used to select the hands carefully. And later he just gave up on that because he says it's not the hands, it's what people do with the hands that makes the game interesting. And then later we would play any imp game that was available. The local Albuquerque club, an hour away, did a couple of team games a month on the weekends, and we'd go play those, and we'd play in the sectionals and occasionally in regionals.
And
And occasionally against people who could really play.
yeah, I mean, that's the key to it. So, after you played in one of these imp games with him, what was your post-mortem experience like? What did you guys talk about after the game?
Well, I looked at every hand we played, and in particular, any hand where we had a good result or a bad one. And then I would nominate hands, and he and I would have a phone call or a face-to-face and talk about those. So my leveling up routine is to pay attention to all the good results, all the bad results, and dig in, see what went well, see what went badly, how could I get better.
And what kind of records do you keep of all of that?
Well, starting about 5 years ago, I was writing kind of a note to myself every couple of weeks with the interesting hands of the past 2 weeks. And I've been collecting those for about 5 years now. There's 2,500 really interesting hands in there. And what they have in common is mostly their hands played at match points by regular people in regular games, so not experts, not the Bermuda Bowl, and their hands where somebody did something either technically right or technically wrong. The correct stuff won lots of match points. The wrong stuff cost a lot of match points. So that's what I've been watching. And what I've seen is that it's not guard squeezes and devil's coups and grand slams and things like that. It's routine stuff. It's not misclicking. Avoiding the mistake you already know how to avoid. Making good decisions about whether to open or not, whether to invite or not. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just the nuts and bolts of bridge. Take your tricks, bid your games. Are there themes that you have seen as you look at all of these hands over time? Obviously, you said concentration and things like that, but are there other things that you see that people of a certain level are making this mistake? The experts are making this mistake. The intermediates are making this mistake.
Well, the big one is not playing as well as you can play. And I used to get coaching from Marty Bergen, and it was all on the email. And one day back 5 years ago, actually more than that now, I cold called him and said, "How about we play a regional?" And we agreed to play a regional, and we played in one of the big Florida regionals where everybody who's anybody is there. And we played the team games, top bracket, the whole week, and I was the fourth smartest person at the table for the entire tournament. And it was great fun. Marty is just such a phenomenal player. But I discovered that the hard thing was to play as well as I could. I was never going to play as well as Marty. I was never going to play as well as the expert opponents. But if I played as well as I could hold my own. And it was more about, you said that you do meditation. It's a meditation kind of thing. How do you pay attention at the bridge table so that you're noticing the things that are important, you're ignoring the things that are not important, you're not rushing, you're not distracted, you're not worried about what just happened, you're not worried about what might happen. And that was the thing that turned the corner for me early on. I found a personal method for being at the bridge table where it gave me a good shot at playing as well as I could play.
Tell
And
us
it
all
was,
about that. That's what we want to know.
well, I had done meditation myself, and it found that being in a meditative state was a key for me, that it was the ability to kind of leave the distractions aside, just focus on what was at hand, stay in the present, don't worry about what just happened, don't worry about what might happen, pay attention, blocking and tackling, you play as well as you can play. The other thing that made a difference for me is I decided early on that it wasn't good enough to win the postmortem. It's not good enough to notice after the hand what would have been the right play. That I wanted to make a good response at the table in the moment. And I don't get those right. I get them right mostly, and usually that's good enough. So I don't fret about the absolute best bid or play. I try to make a good bid or play. And if it blows up in my face, I shrug and go on to the next board, because you're going to get a lot of bottoms playing serious bridge, and you can't let them, bum you out.
Yeah. Saying stay in the moment and, don't think about the past or the future. Saying it is easy, doing it is
Yeah,
hard.
that's
So,
right.
what did you do to train yourself to work on this skill?
Well, one of the things that, I'm retired, I'm not a bridge pro. If I make a stupid mistake and go down in a redoubled slam, my life 2 days from now is going to be no different. I can't let a bad result bother me. But it's easy for me. It's not easy for a pro who has to worry about, is he going to get hired again by this client, or is some other pro going to see it and and trash talk you and that kind of stuff. And nobody expects me to do anything brilliant, so I have no pressure.
So
And I don't.
lowering the
Yeah,
stakes for yourself.
right, right. It's even if Val and I go to the nationals and we win something, that's not going to make any difference in my life after 6 months. I'll be delighted. I'll love it. I'll talk about it forever. But my life will be substantively no different. So the thing I like is playing as well as I can. And
Yeah.
I enjoy the things that work and I shrug off the things that don't. And it makes bridge a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's interesting because in some ways that's opposite to some advice that you get, which is, your mindset matters and you have to go in thinking you can beat someone, or, that if I play my best, we're going to be competitive at least, right? I'm not going to go in saying, oh, I'm going to beat up on the nickel team, but going in and saying, if I play my best, I can keep up with these guys. But I also see what you're saying, like, no one expects me to win this match. There's no pressure on me. Just be in the moment and have fun. And I can see both of those being important, and somehow they seem to be in conflict.
Well, it's also important not to lose before you start.
Yes.
So Dennis and I played in the online J-Law events that the U.S. Bridge Federation folks did. And those were great events. And we played against nickel 3 or 4 times, and we lost all 4 times. We won one of the segments, which was just one of the highlights of my bridge career. But those guys are just phenomenally good. Their front 4 are 2 of the 10 best pairs in the world. Anybody's 10 best. I mean, maybe they're 2 of the top 5. And nickel and cats are phenomenal. So, I mean, it's great to play against those guys. And I don't go in thinking I'm going to lose. I go in thinking it's realistic that I will lose, but I'm going to give them a fight. I'm going to play my best, and I'm not going to play conservative just because they're some of the greatest players on the planet.
Yeah, but that mindset going in, um, it's something that happened to me, that I would play in the finals of a national event or a bracket 1 knockout and feel like I didn't belong there yet. And eventually, over time, you get experience and you do better, and you're like, yeah, I belong here, right? This is my game. I can take these guys. And I'm sure if I were in the finals of the Vanderbilt, I would be like, I don't belong here. So hopefully, eventually, you get to that point of being like, yes, I do. This is my game. I can beat these guys.
Well, it was interesting. The first time Dennis and I played in a team event against great players, it was a bracket 1 knockout in a regional, and I'm sitting down against Jeff Hampson and Mike Purcell.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
And I pitched 14 imps on the first board with a bidding misunderstanding. Then later, Purcell went down in a grand slam, and we did a couple of good things, and we lost the 24 board segment by 20 or something like that. Dennis and I are going away from the table, and he said, so what are you thinking? And I said, if I play as well as I can play, I can hold my own with these guys. I want to do this again.
Yeah. Yeah. What a feeling.
It is. It's great. In what other sport can you play against the best players in the world as a regular player?
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. You just pay your entry fee and you can play against the Tiger Woods of bridge. They don't let you play the Masters if you don't qualify. Right. All right. So, I feel like there are 2 distinct elements to improving your bridge game. And one is technical bridge skill and knowledge. And the other is this coming to the table able to play your best.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly right.
Of the 2, which do you think is more important?
Well, if you want to be a good player, you got to do both. If you have the chops to be a good player, the technical is probably easier because you probably have the sort of nervous system that you can pick up, when it's time to do a cross rough, when it's time to do a dummy reversal, of finding the clues where you can guess that East is more likely to have the queen than West. And so for players with a lot of innate bridge talent, I think playing your best is probably the most difficult. For regular players, the technical is probably the most difficult because bridge is not easy. All bridge players are smart, and even for smart people, it's not an easy game.
Yeah, I mean, you said something that really resonated with me, which was coming to the table and playing the best that I can play. And so if you're already at a level where the best that I can play is pretty darn good, then there's only incremental gain to be gotten from studying more bridge. And I feel like there's a lot more in terms of getting the most out of what you have.
Now, the other piece of that is that it's not clear what technical stuff to focus on. And that's why, this 2,500 hands I've accumulated are really starting to work on me, because what I'm seeing is that there are recurring themes, that the stuff that comes up at the table is not the same thing as what people write about in bridge books.
Well, my bridge books have practical stuff.
They do. Oh, by the way, I love When to Draw Trumps.
Well,
That is
thank you.
just one of my favorite books of all time. It was the first one that really told people how to think about declare play. It's just a wonderful book. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It always feels good. But I feel like for most of my students who are at the intermediate level, playing the best that they can play, they're not quite at the level yet where like the best that they can play is really good, and so they do have a lot of bridge experience to get. But I do think at the same time, they make a lot of really dumb mistakes that is, mistakes that they are better than, right? They
Mm-hmm.
miscount the trumps. We all do this. And so I think there's absolutely something to be gained from both of them. But the more I'm doing this leveling up thing and talking to more really top players, it seems to me like that second part, that coming to the table at your best, is really what separates an expert from a world-class player.
Yeah, well, the other thing I've noticed is the people who are really, really good at the game are astonishingly consistent about how good they are. So one of the things that Dennis and I did is every Sunday we would play an imp practice match against a good pair. And we would pick hands from national and world championships in which people, great players who are playing a system sort of like the one Dennis and I played, were playing. So I spent a lot of time sitting in Mexstroth's chair. And I spent a lot of time sitting in Eric Greco's chair. And when you look at what those players and their partners actually did at the table over thousands of hands, it's just astonishing how well they play and how they almost never screw anything up. Nothing careless, no misclicks, no revokes, no leads out of turn, no forgetting anything. It's really, really impressive. There are lots of other players who are almost that good who are not that consistent.
Yeah. How do you think one levels up there? How do you think you go from being I'm really good to being I'm Jeff Hampson and I just don't make mistakes? I am just consistency personified.
But it's interesting because Hampson is actually better than that. He's that, but he's also an
Really?
assassin.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, he makes up his own rules, and when he does stuff, it works.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, that,
Mexstroth is the same way.
yeah. Honestly, for me, that's not a realistic goal.
Yeah, there are 5 people in the world who play like that.
That's right. I very much accept that I am never going to be the peer of those people. But there's a notch below them, and there's only maybe a dozen people in that really top level, like unbelievable, And then there's a next level of, really good people who like win the Bermuda Bowl and the Vanderbilt and stuff like that. And that's the level I want to get to. I think that's realistic. So what do you think differentiates them from me? And what do you think differentiates the Mextros and the Hampsons from them? And what can one do to level up?
Well, one thing I've noticed, and this is something Dennis taught me, is that to be really great at the game, you have to have a long-term serious partnership with a serious partner, and both of you have to work. So you look at Mextroth and Rodwell, Hampson and Greco, Weinstein and Levin. That's one of the reasons they are so phenomenal, is that they solved that puzzle. It's not easy.
Yeah. But at the same time, obviously, playing a match against Levin and Weinstein and Greco and Hampson, they're going to beat you pretty good. But if Levin and Hampson played together and Greco and Weinstein, and they've never really played together and have no partnership, they would still kill almost everybody because individually,
Yeah,
all four of
that's
those
right.
guys are so good. So at the top level, absolutely, I think partnership is a differentiator. But the individual skill, until you get to that really world class level, to me is a much bigger differentiator.
Well, I'll push back on that a little bit, because one of the things Dennis and I discovered is that the place we could beat two random pros playing together was system stuff. Yeah, that Dennis and I had played together long enough and carefully enough and with enough discussion that we had a very good idea of what the other one had. And we had a rhythm to our partnership where we could achieve results that unpracticed partnerships just couldn't achieve. And it wasn't that we were such wonderful players. I mean, Dennis was a great player,
Yeah, he was.
me, not so much. But the partnership thing really matters, I think. And it matters if you're playing in the open pairs at a sectional.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see these auctions come up all the time that you're just I don't know what this double is, and the pair who's been for 20 years, they know it's on page 217 of their notes that double is takeout or whatever.
There's another thing that I've noticed is most of my partners are regular players. There's nobody special. They're friends. And what I've found is that their biggest enemy is anything they do automatically. If they could stop their impulse to do something automatic and think about the right things rather than doing the automatic thing, that would make a big difference. And an anecdote from me. So Dennis and I started playing in the Meckwell Light style. So it's a precision system. And one of the auctions that happens a lot in that style is partner opens the one diamond opening, which is you open on 40% of all hands, you open a diamond. And the next hand doubles and everything is a transfer. This was impossible for me to learn because I had an automatic thing that when it goes one of a minor double, you ignore the double and you bid what you would have bid. And so as soon as the double card hits the table, my bid hits the table. And I couldn't recognize that the transfers were on when it was me. And then when I could recognize it, I couldn't recognize it when it was the other way around. And I opened a diamond double, and it was Dennis who was in the transfer situation. And it took me a year to get that right. And it was because I was in a rhythm that I wasn't really conscious of.
And what do you think you did to break that habit and slow yourself down?
So Dennis and I had system notes. And I did a 4-page extract of the system notes that I would review before every session. And one of the things it said is, when there is a takeout double, stop and think about transfers. And once I wrote that in the system notes extract and paid attention to it, that solved the problem.
Yeah.
Because I was able to stop for long enough to realize there was something to think about.
It's amazing how something as simple as just identifying and naming the problem is just an essential first step to finding any sort of solution.
Yeah, I thought about all kinds of things. I thought about having, the red double card from a bidding box and, taping it to my knee or something like that so that I would have a cue, to stop and think about that. But eventually I found a solution.
You've obviously, thought about a lot of this and you've done a lot of it yourself. let's say that I came to you or someone else and said, I want to design uh, a practice routine. I want to get to the next level. I'm willing to put the time in, but I don't know how best to spend my time. What would you tell me to do?
I think I'd tell you to hire a compatible pro and tell the pro that's what your goal is and that you want to not just play bridge, you want them to review stuff with you and help you get better. And then if you pick well, that'll work out fine. I read hundreds of bridge books, but I never started getting better until I started working with Dennis and then later Val. So having a coach is important.
I mean, I second that as someone who is on the coaching end of that. A lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
relationship.
hire Adam.
Yes, AdamParrishBridge.com.
Well, you don't know the kinds of things he'll notice that you wouldn't.
Yeah,
And some
exactly.
of it will surprise you. I know this from playing with Val for 3 years now. It's just amazing the kind of stuff he notices.
Yeah. How do you find that it compares playing online to playing in person in terms of what you gain as a student?
I like the online game better. I'm a hermit, so
Yeah.
it suits me just fine.
I find it's really helpful as a teacher because you can go back card by card
Yeah.
and be like, why did you play the 8 of clubs? What about the concentration side of it? Do you think that there are um, exercises or anything one can do to improve that at the table sense and feel?
Well, I don't know about exercises, but I think one should play a lot of bridge and to try very consciously not to play ordinary careless bridge. Try to play as well as you can play every bid, every card. I see this in my partners. They have the view that it's okay to play careless normal bridge, and then you bear down and grit your teeth and focus when you know it's important. And that doesn't work. One of the main reasons is that you don't know when it is you need to pay attention. Often, the thing that you need to do is to notice something you wouldn't ordinarily notice. So I think not playing careless bridge is part of it. So practice playing as well as you can play. Dennis had this thing he would say is that the way you practice is the way you play.
The Memphis tournament is coming up. You said you're getting ready for that. What do you do, the weeks or months before a tournament to really get yourself into peak condition?
Well, Val and I are playing 4 or 5 times a week, and usually it's the 18 board BBO ACBL pairs games. We each nominate hands to talk about later, and I make up a coaching document that has those hands in it, and we do Zoom calls and go through them. Then most Sundays we play an imps match against a good pair. And we have system notes that we've been pretty careful about that we study.
How long are your system notes?
120 pages. That's about as much as I can stand.
And then when you're at the tournament, what do your days look like? What do you do? Do you have habits or anything like that you think contributes to good performance at the table?
Well, when I played my first pro regional, the one with Marty Bergen, I noticed that it was important to get to sleep at night. And I found that taking a long, long, hot shower helped me
Before bed.
before bed because that helped me turn the brain off.
What a
Because
great
I
idea.
love the game and there was lots of stuff going on during the day, and I was keeping notes on hands I wanted to talk about later. But I found that it was hard to get to sleep. And that was something that worked for me. I've also found that in tournaments that have morning and afternoon sessions, I don't eat in between. I'll have a coffee in the morning and then we'll go out and have a nice dinner.
That's all you eat all day is just dinner?
Yeah, I have coffee and a pastry in the morning and then
And
dinner
your
after the session.
like your blood sugar doesn't drop? Like I can't do that.
Yeah, my system doesn't mind that.
I mean, I try not to eat a big lunch, but I
Right.
need something. And I always have a granola bar with me in case I feel that blood sugar dip coming and I can get a little energy to my brain.
Yeah, I mean, my wife has a blood sugar thing. I don't. So that's not something that's an issue for me. But I found that the being careful about eating is important because if you eat very much, then all your energy goes into your digestive system and it's hard to pay attention.
Do you do anything at dinner too? Like, do you, obviously, it sounds like you're having a big dinner.
Well, not a bit. Val and I both love restaurants and we pick the restaurants kind of carefully. We lay off the alcohol for the most part. Maybe may have one drink or one glass of wine or something. I'm not even sure for me that that's that important, the no alcohol. So I actually have quite a tolerance for alcohol. But people say you should lay off, so I do at the tournaments, and so far so good.
Yeah, in the past I've tried to like limit it, and this year I'm cold turkey, like no alcohol at all at the tournaments, and I'm going to see if that contributes to anything.
Yeah, it's a
Can't
good
hurt.
experiment.
Yeah, can't hurt. I mean, I have a lot of other things I'm doing, so I'm not going to be able to like say, oh, it was because I wasn't drinking. But I have kind of an all and then some more approach this year to see what I can do. All right. Any other advice that you would give to me as I'm doing this project this year, or to my students that I'm trying to help level up as well?
One thing I would say is pay attention to the actual hands. The important hands are the ones that occur. So, not the theoretical hands, not the ones people write about in the bridge world, but the ones that actually occur. And if over time you're the sort of person who takes notes, you will notice that there are a lot of sorts of decisions that occur over and over again. Partner opens a no trump, and you have to decide whether you're good enough to invite, good enough to insist on game. How light should you open? Partner gives you a single raise of your one spade opening. Should you try for game or give up? Partner gives a limit raise. Should you go to game? All that. Partner overcalls. How high should you raise? Making sure you take your roughs in the short trump hand before you pull trumps on hands where that's the right solution. It's stuff like that. So I would say don't get too arcane about the technical stuff. Pay attention to the technical stuff that's going to occur, and don't worry about the guard squeezes and the devil's coups and the bridge and the menagerie stuff.
Yeah, just practical at the table bridge. That's what I'm trying to work on. Well, Charlie, it sounds like you're doing a great job. I commend you on, your commitment to getting better. And I wish you all the luck in the world. I hope we can have a drink in Memphis.
Val and I would like that. So let's do it.
Not a drink. We'll have some juice or something.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Charlie.
Okay, see you later.